Most people underwrite new construction by asking, what does this cost? But the real question is, what does my capital have to survive? Because in new construction, deals don't usually fail from one big mistake. They fail when capital gets exposed to conditions it wasn't planned to handle. Let's take a look at the Johnson project. This is your typical infill lot. There was once a house here, it was torn down at some point, and we were putting a 2,200 square foot house with a basement on this lot. Nothing crazy, nothing we hadn't done before, but once we got started, we started moving some dirt around, and capital got exposed. We cleared out the lot, pulled all the stumps, started prepping that pad for the foundation, and that soil ended up being soft. We walked it down real good, and it was still just soft. So we drilled a test augered pier. At about 7 feet deep, it was still drilling like butter. So we drilled another one, same thing. And that's when we stopped. At that point, the issue wasn't only depth, the issue was confidence. We didn't know where competent bearing was, and we weren't going to keep chasing it with open holes while time and money kept stacking. So we called it and switched to helical piles. Now we're not pouring a standard basement foundation. This is now the gold standard when it comes to the structural integrity of a foundation. Helical piles are mechanically driven into the ground until they've proven they've reached competent soil or rock. Once they're in, they're immediately load bearing and engineered to resist compression, uplift, and lateral movement. That's why helical piles are used under bridges, transmission towers, and commercial structures where failure isn't an option. We had to choose certainty when the dirt gave us none. And this wasn't some cheap fix. 22 piles, 606 linear feet, and $14,000 later, we can now confidently begin pouring the foundation of this house. A $14,000 exercise that came straight off the bottom line. And here's the thing, we didn't have a choice. The structural integrity of a foundation isn't something you gamble with. When the ground gives you uncertainty, you're gonna pay for it one way or another. You're either gonna pay up front, do it right, eliminate the risk, and move forward with confidence, or you don't, and you end up paying 10 times more later when something fails. Now, nobody screwed up here, the ground just didn't cooperate. That's the cost of playing this game. There will be unknowns and discrepancies. The difference is whether you plan for it or whether it catches you off guard. Now let's take a look at the commercial project. Nothing went wrong here per se, nothing broke, nobody screwed up, but again, capital got exposed to something we didn't control. While we were tying into the sewer lateral, we noticed something was off. The hole we dug to tie in was sitting full of water and we weren't getting any rain. Turns out the water main was leaking. We didn't ignore it, we called it in immediately. The city came out, they dug around, they looked at it, then they left and didn't come back for a while. And that's where the problem started. Over time, the leak kept getting worse and worse. The ground underneath the street started to wash out and the asphalt began sinking. What started as a leak turned into a sinkhole. Now, fast forward, we're approaching the finish line of this build, and the reality was we could not finish the house without water. We couldn't install plumbing fixtures, we couldn't install the water heater, we couldn't set the HVAC unit because it would just be sitting there while we were at a standstill and probably get stolen. We couldn't lay sod or put any plants in the ground because they die without water. So the house just sat there for 3 months. We were at the last 10% of the build and completely stuck. Not because the build got harder, not because anyone screwed up, but because we were dependent on the city and the city moved on their timeline, not ours. Every single one of those days the house sat, interest was accumulating. The house didn't fail, the deal didn't go wrong, capital just had to survive longer than planned. This is what most people miss about new construction. It's not just what things cost, it's what your capital has to survive while you're exposed. Now, I'm not saying you'll hit soft soil on your deal, and I'm not saying you'll be waiting on the city to put in a water meter for 3 months, but you will run into something. Something is going to happen. That's just the nature of this business. This is the part of new construction that you don't hear until you're already in it. Nothing went wrong on both of those deals per se. Everything was handled, but capital was exposed to unknown site conditions, external dependencies, and timeline extensions. Your deal only works if your capital can absorb that exposure. Before you build, you need to understand how to evaluate what your capital actually has to survive, not just what it has to pay for. That's the part most people don't plan for. Before you build, you need to understand how to evaluate what your capital actually has to survive, not just what it has to pay for. That's the part most people don't plan for. In the next video, I'll show you why a deal can work on paper and still be the wrong deal for the person doing it. If you're thinking about getting into new construction, I put together a free guide that breaks down exactly what first-time builders underestimate about capital exposure and time. The link's in the description. I'll see you guys in the next one.